Terrain in DBR is important. At the top of each army list is that terrain available to a defender to place on a battlefield. In this respect, the second line of each army list specifies the army's home climate, its aggression factor, and codes for the types of terrain it can choose from if the defender. The invader too must choose from the defender's list of terrain types. The terrain permitted to a defending army is based either on that of its nation's heartland or its capital, or on that of a foreign base of operations. The terrain codes are on an army list. If some of these types are underlined, that means they are compulsory or mandatory. Even if not listed, a single patch of coastal dunes or marsh can always be used if in contact with a waterway, or a single patch of marsh if in contact with a river. For CanCon 2025, we are restricting those coastal dunes or marshes next to a waterway or river to no more than 1/2 feature equivalent. To be clear, it is the defender's terrain from which players can choose, not the invaders. Armies with high aggression factors, the maximum being 4 and the minimum being 0, are less likely to be the defender. Their advantage lies in deploying second and moving first. Armies with low aggressions, such as 1 or 0, are more likely to be the defender. Their advantage lies in the ability to choose the lion's share of the terrain and to control the types of terrain available to both players. Some important pointers include that if a player chooses a road, the first road counts as 0 feature equivalents. In other words, it is effectively a freebie. The second road, and yes, you can pick 2 roads or more, only counts as half a feature equivalent. That makes roads a very cheap spend in terms of terrain feature equivalents, especially if you are the invader who is only entitled to 0 to 2 FEs all up. As outlined in our Introduction to Terrain video, it is feature equivalents that are relevant, not actual features. And 2 feature equivalents may be a single large piece of 1.5 feature equivalents, along with a small half feature equivalent area feature, or it may be many more terrain pieces than simply 2. In terms of roads, whilst the first 2 roads are relatively cheap, a third road is expensive and counts as 2 feature equivalents. In this respect, an invader will never be able to choose 3 roads in any given battle. The obvious advantage to roads is that all troops move faster along them. Light horse, if moving entirely along a road, moves 600 paces or 72 centimetres. That is more than half the table on a single move. If your opponent is Mongols or another army full of light horse, such as Persians, putting on a series of roads may not be the best bet, as it could see their army on your flank without expending too many pips at all. Luckily, Mongols don't get roads if they are the defender. Another terrain issue of note is that any terrain piece entirely of good going, being an open field or enclosure that is good going, can be the size of a 1.5 feature equivalent, but only counts as 1 feature equivalent. This has the effect of giving a player who is selecting a terrain piece entirely of good going a half feature equivalent discount for very large pieces of terrain. Open fields can be selected when the defender has built up areas in his terrain, but no enclosed fields. As an invader looking for open plains to fight on, this means you can place 2 large 1.5 feature equivalent open fields and still fit within the 0 to 2 feature equivalent limit. Enclosed fields for CanCon 2025 can also be entirely good going. Open fields and enclosures, though, are not placed until after hills and built-up areas, and as such, the larger the open field or enclosed field, the less likely it is that the terrain piece is able to be placed. This is because a dice is rolled when placing terrain, and that dice dictates how far away an area feature has to be from another area feature. If a terrain feature cannot be placed the distance away dictated by the dice, and it does not fit on the table, then the terrain feature is discarded. Indeed, the order of terrain placement is probably as important, if not more so, than the terrain chosen. The order of placement of terrain is waterways, then rivers, then hills that are difficult going, other hills, then roads, then built-up areas, then fields, then the rest of the terrain in the order chosen by the invader, save that the defender gets to place all of their pieces of that type first. Waterways and rivers count as 2 FEs each, so unless the defender has a compulsory one of those types, a river and a waterway cannot be placed on the table together. This is because the defender is restricted to placing 2 to 3 feature equivalents of any permitted type that is not compulsory. These optional types are in addition to the 1 to 2 feature equivalents of each compulsory type. In this respect, a defending army with a compulsory terrain type has a great terrain advantage by being able to select multiple terrain pieces, that being 1 to 2 feature equivalents of each type, in addition to any optional terrain. After the placement of waterways and rivers, hills that are steep are the first area feature type that can be placed. This makes them valuable if your army likes difficult going, such as the Papua New Guinean Highlanders, or as a means to exclude other area pieces. In this respect, players roll to place an area feature, and then roll for how far away the second and subsequent features must be. A small steep hill, or hill gentle, which is the next terrain type to be placed, can mean that other subsequent features cannot fit on the table when diced for. Remember, area features only have to be the distance away prescribed by a dice roll from an area feature, so they can be as close to rivers or waterways as they like. And indeed, if hill steep are dice to be placed on the edge where there is a waterway, that hill steep may be interposed on the waterway as an island or promontory. Following hills, roads are placed, and those roads may deviate around or over hills, and may deviate around or cross rivers. This is entirely at a player's discretion. Where a road crosses a river, it may be designated either a ford or a bridge. Following roads, a defender may place a built-up area. Only a defender can place a built-up area. A built-up area is a hamlet or large manor house or small town or village, by way of example. A built-up area is diced for as usual, but must be on a road, river, table edge or waterway. A defender cannot ambush inside a built-up area unless it is fortified, but if the built-up area is on the flank of the table and not further forward than the defendant's deployment distance from their rear edge, the defender can deploy troops in it. In other words, it is both a handy way of closing down a flank to your enemy and deploying at or close to the table's edge, which would not normally be allowed. If a defender elects to take this option and is able to do so, they should consider the following issues so as not to get themselves tangled up with a variety of rules quirks. The first issue is that your general needs to be within 36 centimetres if your troops are in a built-up area and you propose to move them. This is because, being inside the built-up area, they are out of sight. And if the general is not within 36 centimetres, any movement incurs an extra pip penalty. If your general is within the deployment zone and not with the elements in the built-up area, it will mean that the command is likely to need at least 2 pips in the first turn if the elements in the built-up area are going to move out. An alternative solution is, of course, to move the general up closer as the first move for that command. The second consideration is that it is only when a group move ends in difficult going that movement has to be by way of single element wide column. This means that a wide group can be deployed on the edge of a built-up area and move out as a single wide group in the first or subsequent turns and for only a single pip. This is, of course, as mentioned previously, your general is close enough, and so long as all the elements in the group proposing to move end in open or good going. Thanks for listening to this video, and we look forward to seeing you at CanCon 2025.